The envelope arrived on a Thursday morning in early March, unremarkable except for its weight. Garrett Holloway held it at the kitchen table while his daughter ate cereal 3 feet away, the paper stock expensive enough to whisper money even before he saw what was inside. No return address. No postmark he recognized. Just his name in serif font that looked like it cost more per letter than his entire monthly grocery budget. Inside a cashier's check for $3 million. Below it a single typed line, "For your silence." The cereal spoon clinked against the bowl. Magnolia looked up, 7 years old, with her mother's eyes and a child's radar for when adults were lying about everything being fine. "What's that, Daddy?" Garrett folded the paper slowly, his hands not quite steady. The check felt obscene. The note felt worse. $3 million to forget. $3 million to stop asking questions. $3 million to pretend the woman sleeping in Rachel's old craft room down the hall wasn't the daughter of the person who had killed his wife. "Just junk mail, sweetheart." Maggie tilted her head, unconvinced but willing to let it go because she was still young enough to believe her father wouldn't lie about important things. She returned to her cereal. Garrett stared at the envelope and tried to remember how to breathe. Down the hall, Claire Ashford was humming, making breakfast for his daughter like she'd done every morning for the past 2 months. Like she belonged here. Like she was family. The woman in his spare room hummed softly, unaware that her mother had just tried to buy his compliance, and Garrett realized with the kind of clarity that only comes at $3 million moments that he'd let the enemy into his home. 6 months earlier, Garrett Holloway learned about rock bottom the way most people learn about gravity, by falling until there was nothing beneath him but concrete reality and the bills he couldn't pay. It happened on a Tuesday in November, the kind of gray California morning where even the palm trees looked depressed. He'd been sitting in the break room of Vertex Manufacturing eating a sandwich that tasted like cardboard and obligation when Jerry from Human Resources appeared in the doorway, wearing that expression. The one that said, "Your life was about to get smaller." "Garrett, can we talk conference room?" 23 minutes later, he stood in the parking lot with a cardboard box containing a coffee mug Maggie had decorated when she was 5, 3 years of performance reviews that suddenly meant nothing, and a severance package that wouldn't last through spring. The official reason was restructuring. The real reason was that Titan Industries had acquired Vertex 6 months prior, and Titan didn't care about loyalty or seniority, or the fact that Garrett had worked double shifts when Rachel was sick, burning through every hour of leave until there was nothing left but the job itself. And now he didn't even have that. The apartment felt wrong when you came home in the middle of the day. Off balance somehow, like walking into a theater after the movie started and everyone else already knew the plot. Garrett set the box on the kitchen counter and looked around at the cramped 2-bedroom in the aging complex off Highway 91 that had once felt cozy and now just felt small. Dishes in the sink. Maggie's backpack dumped by the door. Rachel's reading glasses still on the side table where she'd left them 2.5 years ago because moving them felt like erasing her completely. "Daddy." Maggie stood in her bedroom doorway, home sick from Riverside Elementary, with what the school nurse had called a mild fever, but what Garrett suspected was actually exhaustion. His daughter was 7 years old and already carried shadows under her eyes that no child should know. "Hey, baby girl." He manufactured a smile. Kids noticed everything. It was one of their superpowers developed when the world stopped making sense. Hyper-awareness of changes in routine, shifts in tone. The particular way adults rearranged their faces when they were lying about everything being okay. "You're home early." "Yeah, they gave me the afternoon off." Maggie studied him with those eyes, Rachel's eyes dark and intelligent and far too perceptive. Then she nodded, accepting the lie, because what else could a 7-year-old do? She patted over and hugged him around the waist, her small arms surprisingly strong. "It's okay, Daddy. We'll be okay." That, Garrett thought as he held his daughter in their shabby kitchen on a Tuesday afternoon, was the moment he understood that childhood was supposed to protect you from having to say things like that. The math was brutal and simple. Severance $4,800. Rent $1,650. Utilities $200 if they were careful. Food $400, maybe $350 if they ate a lot of pasta. Maggie's after-school program $175. Car payment on the 2009 Accord $265. Student loans from the engineering degree that was supposed to be an investment, $320. Health insurance through Cobra, which would expire in 18 months anyway, $380. He made the numbers work. Then he made them work again. Then he opened a beer he couldn't afford and made them work a third time, arriving at the same conclusion. By June, they'd be drowning. Rachel's life insurance had covered the funeral and 6 months of bills before it vanished like morning fog in Riverside County. There was no family money, no safety net, no rich relatives waiting in the wings. Garrett's parents were gone. Rachel's mother was in a nursing home in Florida, her mind already halfway to somewhere else. Friends had been sympathetic after the funeral, but sympathy had a shelf life. Most people's expired around the same time the casseroles stopped coming. He could find another job. Obviously. He'd already sent out 37 applications tailoring each resume, crafting earnest cover letters that radiated competence and enthusiasm. So far, 4 rejections, 33 silences. The economy was recovering according to news anchors with perfect teeth, but recovery was a relative term. For people like Garrett, mid-40s manufacturing background, no advanced degree recovery looked a lot like a mirage. He needed something now, not next month. Not after interviews and background checks and the slow grinding wheels of corporate hiring. Now. That's when he remembered the spare room. It had been Rachel's craft space back when she was getting her real estate license before the headaches started. Before the diagnosis that came too late and the treatments that cost everything and bought them 18 extra months that were somehow both precious and devastating. After she died, Garrett had closed the door and pretended the room didn't exist. But it did exist. 120 square feet of unused space in an apartment where space was expensive. He could rent it out. The idea felt wrong at first, like betraying Rachel's memory. But then he looked at the numbers again, and the numbers didn't care about sentiment. The numbers just sat there implacable and honest. Without extra income, they were finished. He posted the listing that night on Craigslist and the Riverside Community Board. Small furnished room in quiet apartment, $700 per month plus utilities, kitchen and bathroom shared, no smoking, no pets, prefer quiet tenant, background check required. The responses started coming within hours. A graduate student who sent a 3-paragraph essay about his research into polymer science. A woman who asked if she could pay in cash and seemed disappointed when Garrett said he'd need official documentation. A guy named Trevor who showed up for the viewing smelling like weed and opportunity, neither of which Garrett was interested in. Then on a Friday evening while Maggie was at a friend's house, the doorbell rang. Garrett opened it to find a young woman with a messenger bag and the kind of calm expression that suggested she'd already decided she was taking the room. "Hi, I'm Claire. I emailed about the room." She was younger than he'd expected. Early 20s, maybe college age. Dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, minimal makeup, wearing jeans and a sweater that looked expensive in the way quality announced itself quietly. She had an interesting face, not conventionally pretty but striking, the kind of face that made you wonder what she was thinking. "Right, come in." She stepped inside and looked around with focused attention, not judging exactly, just cataloging. Her gaze moved across the modest furniture, the stack of bills Garrett had forgotten to hide, Maggie's drawings taped to the refrigerator, the water stain on the ceiling that the landlord kept promising to fix. "It's nice." Somehow she didn't sound like she was lying. Garrett showed her the room. It was small but clean, with a twin bed, a desk, a narrow closet, and a window that looked out at the apartment building across the alley. Not much, but honest about what it was. Claire walked to the window and stood there for a moment quiet. "It's perfect. You haven't asked about lease terms yet." She turned, and there was something in her eyes, a flicker of something Garrett couldn't quite name, determination maybe, or relief. "I need a place that's quiet, private, somewhere I can think." She paused, and Garrett noticed the gold locket at her throat, delicate chain catching the afternoon light. "I can pay 6 months up front. Cash, if that works for you." 6 months. That was $4,200. That was breathing room. That was the difference between surviving and drowning. "You're a student." The question felt safer than accepting immediately. I'm taking time off, freelance work, online stuff, flexible hours. Vague enough to be suspicious, but Garrett found himself not caring. She seemed clean, polite, calm, and she was offering cash, which meant no waiting on background checks, no references that might slow things down when he needed fast. I have a daughter. She's 7. This isn't exactly a party house. Good. I'm not exactly a party person. Kitchen and bathroom are shared. House rules are basic cleanup after yourself, no guests without permission, quiet after 10. Sounds reasonable. Garrett studied her. There was something almost unsettling about how composed she was. Most people moving into a stranger's apartment asked more questions, showed more hesitation. Claire acted like she'd already made every calculation and arrived at a conclusion. You're not running from something, are you? Half joking, but not entirely. She smiled, and it was the first real emotion he'd seen from her. Sad around the edges. Aren't we all running from something? Fair point. When do you want to move in? Tomorrow. Claire arrived on Saturday morning with 3 suitcases, a laptop bag, and absolutely no furniture. Garrett helped her carry everything up the stairs, and she unpacked with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Everything had a place. Everything was organized. Within an hour, the room looked lived in but not cluttered, personal but not revealing. Maggie watched from the doorway with the wide-eyed curiosity of a child encountering something new in her carefully controlled world. Are you going to live here? Claire crouched down to Maggie's level, which Garrett noticed and appreciated. Adults who talked to kids like small people instead of incomplete humans were rare. Yeah, for a while. Is that okay with you? Maggie considered this seriously. Do you like pancakes? Love them. Good. Daddy makes pancakes on Sundays, but they're always kind of weird. Hey, Garrett protested, but he was smiling. Claire grinned. Maybe I can help. I make pretty good pancakes. And just like that, Maggie decided Claire was acceptable. That first week passed in a blur of adjustment. Claire was exactly what she'd promised, quiet, clean, respectful of boundaries. She worked on her laptop at odd hours, sometimes late into the night. She paid her rent on time. She was friendly without being intrusive, helpful without being overbearing. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the apartment started to change. It started with small things. Garrett would come home from job interviews that went nowhere and find the dishes already done. Maggie would mention that Claire had helped her with math homework, and suddenly fractions made sense. The refrigerator, which usually contained whatever Garrett could afford at the discount grocery store, started accumulating fresh vegetables and real cheese and the kind of bread that didn't come pre-sliced in plastic. You don't have to do that, Garrett said one evening, finding Claire in the kitchen cooking something that actually smelled good. Do what? Buy food. Help with Maggie. You're paying rent, not... I like cooking, Claire interrupted gently. And Maggie's sweet. If it bothers you, I'll stop. It didn't bother him. That was the problem. It felt too good, too easy, too much like having another adult in the house who actually gave a damn. He'd been alone with Maggie for 2.5 years, carrying everything by himself. And suddenly there was someone else picking up the slack without being asked. It felt like cheating, or charity, or maybe just human kindness, which Garrett had started to think was extinct. It doesn't bother me. I just don't want you to feel obligated. I don't feel obligated. I feel grateful. She said it simply, like it was obvious. Like renting a room in a stranger's shabby apartment was something to be grateful for. Garrett wanted to ask what she was running from that made this place feel like sanctuary. But he didn't. Everyone was entitled to their secrets. By the 3rd week, it started to feel normal. Claire was just part of the routine, eating breakfast with them, asking Maggie about school, occasionally joining them for movies on the couch. She laughed at Maggie's jokes. She listened when Garrett complained about the job search. She existed in their space without demanding anything in return. For the first time since Rachel died, the apartment didn't feel like a mausoleum. It felt like a home. Garrett should have known better. He'd learned the hard way that when things felt too good to be true, it was because they were. The first real crack appeared on a Thursday afternoon in late January. Garrett was in the living room wrestling with his laptop, a 6-year-old dinosaur that wheezed through basic tasks when Claire emerged from her room looking frustrated. "My laptop died, just completely bricked. I have a project due and I'm going to lose everything if I can't access my files." "Did you try?" "I tried everything. It's dead. Dead." Garrett looked at his own computer with its spinning wheel of doom. "Mine's not much better, but you can use it if you want. Fair warning, it's slow." "Slow is better than nothing." She took over the laptop and Garrett went to start dinner. He was halfway through chopping an onion when he heard her voice from the living room, sharp with surprise. "Garrett, why do you have files about Titan Industries on your computer?" He froze. He'd forgotten about that. After the layoff, he'd gone down a rabbit hole searching for information about the company that had acquired Vertex. Not for any particular reason, just anger, mostly. Wanting to understand who had casually destroyed his livelihood. He'd downloaded some news articles, financial reports, whatever he could find. "Just research," he called back, keeping his voice casual. "After they laid me off, I wanted to know who they were." Silence from the living room. Then Claire appeared in the kitchen doorway and her expression had changed. The casual friendliness was gone, replaced by something harder. Calculating. "Titan Industries. You worked for them." "Worked for a company they acquired. They cleaned house after the merger. I was part of the cleaning." He set down the knife. "Why?" Claire's jaw tightened. For a moment she looked like she was going to say something important. Then the moment passed and she shook her head. "No reason. Just surprised, that's all." But she was lying. Garrett could tell the same way he could tell when Maggie was hiding something or when Jerry from HR was about to deliver bad news. Claire knew something about Titan, and whatever it was had just made him interesting to her in a way he hadn't been before. She went back to her room shortly after claiming a headache. She didn't join them for dinner, and when Garrett passed her door later that night, he heard her on the phone, voice low and urgent, speaking words he couldn't quite make out. The next morning she was back to normal, cheerful, helpful, making pancakes for Maggie like nothing had happened. But Garrett couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. A curtain had been pulled back just far enough for him to glimpse something underneath, then slammed shut before he could process what he'd seen. He told himself he was being paranoid. She was a tenant, not a spy. So what if she was curious about his former employer? So what if she made mysterious phone calls? Everyone was entitled to their privacy. But the feeling lingered. It was Mrs. Keating from 3B who planted the first real seed of doubt. Garrett ran into her in the laundry room on a Sunday afternoon. Mrs. Keating had lived in the building for 20 years and knew everyone's business with the thoroughness of a career intelligence analyst. "I see you have a new roommate." She didn't look up from folding towels with military precision. "Yeah, Claire. She's renting the spare room." "Pretty girl, I suppose." Mrs. Keating gave him a look that suggested she'd heard about every terrible decision he'd made and several he hadn't thought of yet. "You run a background check. She paid 6 months cash up front. Seemed like a good deal." Mrs. Keating returned to her towels, but her disapproval radiated like heat. "My niece works at the Grandview Hotel downtown, that fancy place on 5th Street. Garrett's hand stilled on the dryer door. "Okay. She says there was a girl staying there last month, young, your roommate's age, paying cash for a suite that cost $850 a night. Caused a fuss when she checked out early." Mrs. Keating pulled out her phone with the determination of someone proving a point. "She showed me a photo from the hotel's social media, some charity event they hosted. You want to guess who was in the background?" Garrett didn't want to guess. He wanted Mrs. Keating to mind her own business and let him do laundry in peace. But she was already swiping through photos. Here. The image was grainy, taken from across a ballroom filled with people in evening wear. But there in the background near a pillar was a figure that looked unmistakably like Claire. Same dark hair, same serious expression, wearing a dress that probably cost more than Garrett's car, standing next to an older woman in a designer suit. The caption read, "Evangeline Ashford, CEO of Titan Industries with daughter Claire at annual Riverside Charity Gala." Garrett's mouth went dry. "Could be anyone," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Could be," Mrs. Keating agreed. Or could be your cash-paying tenant has some secrets. Just thought you should know. You've got that little girl to think about." She gathered her laundry and left, and Garrett stood there staring at the photo on her phone screen until it went dark. He didn't confront Claire, not yet. Instead, he started paying attention. The bracelet, for instance. She wore it constantly, a delicate gold chain, simple but clearly expensive. The kind of jewelry that whispered wealth rather than shouting it. He'd noticed it before, but hadn't thought much about it. Now he found himself wondering what kind of freelancer could afford something like that. The rent payments, too. She always paid in cash, crisp $100 bills that looked like they'd come straight from a bank. Never asked for a receipt, never tried to negotiate, just handed over the money like it was nothing. And her laptop. The one that had supposedly died. Garrett happened to walk past her open door one evening and saw her working on it. The bricked computer was functioning perfectly, displaying what looked like complex spreadsheets and documents. She'd lied about it breaking, which meant she'd wanted access to his computer, which meant she'd been looking for something. The Titan files. Garrett felt something cold settle in his stomach. This wasn't paranoia. Something was actually wrong here. He started spending time at the Riverside Public Library, using their computers to dig deeper into Titan Industries. What he found was a corporate labyrinth shell, companies, subsidiaries, international holdings. Titan had its fingers in everything: manufacturing, real estate, pharmaceuticals, infrastructure development. One article caught his attention. It was from 4 years ago, a small piece in a regional newspaper about a town called Brennan Falls, 2 hours north. The town's water supply had been contaminated with industrial chemicals. Dozens of people had gotten sick. 4 had died. The investigation had pointed to a Titan subsidiary's improper disposal of manufacturing waste. But the case had been settled out of court with all parties signing non-disclosure agreements. 4 people dead because a corporation had decided that proper waste disposal was too expensive. Garrett thought about Rachel, about the headaches that had started 3 years before her diagnosis, about how many times she'd complained about the water tasting funny, about how they'd laughed about the city's aging pipes and made jokes about buying filters they couldn't afford. He thought about the timeline. Titan had acquired the water treatment facility in Riverside County 18 months before Rachel got sick. There had been complaints about water quality, notices that got ignored. And then Rachel had started having headaches. And then came the diagnosis. And then she was gone. It was probably nothing. Coincidence. Grief, looking for something to blame besides random cellular mutation and bad luck. But what if it wasn't? Garrett went down the rabbit hole. He found more articles, more incidents. A pattern of Titan subsidiaries cutting corners, violating regulations, paying fines that were small enough to be considered business expenses. He found lawsuits that had been settled, whistleblowers who'd been silenced, investigators who'd been stonewalled. And he found a name that appeared over and over: Evangeline Ashford, CEO of Titan Industries. Billionaire, philanthropist, untouchable. There was a photo of her at some charity gala, shaking hands with politicians, smiling like a woman who'd never worried about anything in her life. Next to her stood a young woman in an elegant dress, identified in the caption as her daughter. Garrett enlarged the photo. His hands started shaking. The daughter was Claire. He sat in the library until closing, staring at the screen, trying to make sense of it. Evangeline Ashford's daughter was living in his apartment, sleeping in Rachel's old craft room, making pancakes for his daughter. She'd shown up out of nowhere, paid cash, insinuated herself into their lives with surgical precision. Why? The obvious answer was that she knew something, that she'd somehow found out Garrett had worked for a Titan subsidiary, that she was there to watch him make sure he didn't cause trouble, didn't start asking dangerous questions about his wife's death. But that didn't make sense. If Titan wanted to keep tabs on him, they wouldn't send the CEO's daughter. They'd send lawyers, investigators, people who knew what they were doing, unless Claire wasn't there on Titan's behalf, unless she was running from them. Garrett remembered the urgency in her voice when she'd said she needed somewhere quiet to think, the way she'd reacted when she saw the Titan files on his computer, not suspicious but shocked, concerned, like she knew something he didn't. What if she wasn't the enemy? What if she was a victim too? The library lights started flashing, signaling closing time. Garrett saved his research to a flash drive and headed home, his mind spinning with questions he didn't know how to ask. When he got back to the apartment, Claire was on the couch with Maggie watching some animated movie. They looked up when he entered, and the casual domesticity of the scene made his chest hurt. "Hey, there's leftover pasta in the fridge if you're hungry." "Thanks." He paused. "Can we talk after Maggie goes to bed?" Something flickered in Claire's eyes. "Sure." He waited until Maggie was asleep, tucked in with her stuffed rabbit and a nightlight that cast gentle shadows. Then he went to the living room where Claire was waiting on the couch with her hands folded in her lap like a student expecting detention. "I know who you are." Claire didn't flinch, didn't deny it, just nodded slowly like she'd been expecting this. "How long have you known?" "Couple days. I saw a photo. You're Evangeline Ashford's daughter." "Yes." "So what the hell are you doing here?" Claire took a breath, and when she spoke, her voice was steady, but edged with something that might have been fear. "I'm trying to fix something. Something terrible. And I needed a place to hide while I figured out how." "Hide from who, your mother?" "From everyone." She looked up at him, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You asked me once if I was running from something. The answer is yes. I'm running from a truth that could destroy my mother's empire. And if she finds out what I know, if she realizes what I'm planning to do—" She didn't finish. "What are you planning to do?" Claire stood and walked to her room. She returned a moment later with a small external hard drive, the kind that could hold terabytes of data. "My mother's company has been poisoning people for years, cutting corners, falsifying reports, bribing inspectors. They contaminated water supplies in at least 7 cities. Her voice was shaking now. "Riverside County was one of them." The room tilted. Garrett gripped the arm of the couch to steady himself, the hard drive in Claire's hand suddenly the most dangerous object he'd ever seen. Smaller than a paperback novel, matte black casing, and inside it the evidence that his wife hadn't just gotten unlucky. That Rachel's death had been deliberate, calculated a line item in someone's profit margin. Riverside County. His voice came out raw, scraped from somewhere deep. Claire's face crumpled with something that looked like relief and shame twisted together. "I don't have names of specific victims, but I have the timeline, the chemical signatures, the internal memos where they knew exactly what they were doing." She pulled her laptop over fingers, moving across the keyboard with practiced speed. A spreadsheet bloomed across the screen, rows of data that meant nothing until you understood what you were looking at. Then they meant everything. Trichloroethylene, TCE. Your water treatment facility was contaminated from 2019 through 2021, 15 times the legal limit at peak. They knew because they were testing it monthly. They had the data. Garrett's eyes tracked down the columns. Dates, chemical concentrations, projected costs for proper disposal versus settlement payments. A calculus of human life reduced to dollars per death. Rachel got sick in 2020. It wasn't a question. The latency period for TCE-related brain tumors is typically 12 to 18 months after exposure begins. If she was drinking tap water regularly from early 2019, Claire stopped, closed her eyes. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Garrett wanted to put his fist through the wall, wanted to scream, wanted to do anything except sit there with the knowledge that his wife had been murdered by a spreadsheet formula that determined her life was worth less than proper waste disposal. But Maggie was asleep down the hall, and you didn't get to fall apart when you had a 7-year-old who still believed you could fix anything. "Why?" The question came out quieter than he'd intended. "Why are you telling me this?" Claire looked at him with eyes that had seen too much for 23 years. "Because I need help. I have evidence, documents, emails, internal memos, enough to prove everything. But I can't just release it. My mother has lawyers who make problems disappear, fixers who know how to bury stories. If I go public without protection, without witnesses, without a plan—" She didn't need to finish. Garrett understood. People who threatened billion-dollar empires didn't usually live long enough to see justice. "So you came here." "I traced the investigation from Brennan Falls, Found names of people who'd worked for Titan subsidiaries, people who might have questions. She pulled the locket from beneath her sweater, the one he'd noticed that first day. It fell open in her palm, revealing a photo of a younger Claire with the woman he now knew was Evangeline Ashford. Below it, a handwritten note in elegant script. "For my daughter, build something better than I did." Your name came up in the search, and when I saw you had a room to rent, I thought maybe I could learn something. See if you knew anything. Ask careful questions. Her laugh was bitter. I didn't expect to like you. Didn't expect Maggie to be so sweet. Didn't expect this place to feel like the first home I've had in 10 months. Garrett stared at the hard drive, at the proof of corporate murder sitting on his coffee table next to Maggie's homework and a half-empty glass of water he'd poured from the tap without thinking. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to help me make this public, not just leak it to journalists who might get bought off. I want to make it undeniable, irrefutable. I want witnesses who can't be silenced." She leaned forward, intensity burning off her like heat. "And I want to do it soon because my mother's people are looking for me. They've been looking since I disappeared, and eventually—" Her phone buzzed on the table between them. The screen lit up with a single word, "Mother." Claire's hand moved toward it, then stopped. The phone buzzed again. A text message appeared below the missed call notification. "I know you're in Riverside. Come home. Last chance." The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. "That's not a request," Garrett said. "No, it's not." Claire picked up the phone, stared at it for 3 seconds, then powered it off completely. "If we're going to do this, we need to move fast. Tomorrow, before she figures out exactly where I am." Garrett thought about Maggie sleeping down the hall, thought about the bills he couldn't pay, and the job he didn't have, and the apartment they'd lose in 3 months if things didn't change. Thought about the easy path, which would be telling Claire to pack her bags and take her corporate warfare somewhere else. Then he thought about Rachel filling Maggie's sippy cup from the kitchen tap, neither of them knowing they were drinking poison someone had chosen to put there. "Okay, we do this right. We get your evidence to people who can't be bought. We make it public in a way that can't be suppressed." He met her eyes. "And we make damn sure your mother pays for what she's done." They didn't sleep that night. Claire pulled up files on her laptop while Garrett made coffee, and together they went through the evidence piece by piece. It was all there, meticulously documented in the language of bureaucracy designed to obscure truth. Memos about waste management optimization that actually meant illegal dumping. Reports showing contamination levels marked as acceptable when they were 15 times the legal limit. Email chains between executives discussing settlement amounts with families of the dead, calculating the cost of hush money versus proper disposal. And threaded through everything like a signature on a death warrant. Evangeline Ashford's electronic approval on budget authorizations, settlement payments, decisions that had killed 52 people, as casually as someone might approve a vacation request. "How did you get all this?" Garrett asked it around 4 in the morning when the apartment was silent, except for the hum of Claire's laptop and the distant sound of traffic on Highway 91. "My mother isn't just wealthy. She's old-fashioned about certain things. Keeps backups of everything on a private server at the house. She wanted me to learn the business, understand how empires are built." Claire's smile held no warmth. "I had administrative access since I was 16. Took me 8 months to copy everything without triggering security alerts. Then I ran." "Where have you been?" "Moving. Hotels at first paid cash used different names. But they were looking corporate security, private investigators, probably some people without business cards. I kept trying to figure out how to use what I had without getting myself killed, or disappeared into some psychiatric facility where my concerned mother could make sure I got the help I needed." The fear beneath her words was real. Garrett had met Evangeline Ashford's people once when they'd come to Vertex after the acquisition. Men in expensive suits who smiled with their mouths but not their eyes, the kind of people who made problems go away. "So you found my listing?" "I found 40 listings. Yours was the first where the address matched a former Titan employee. I thought maybe you'd know something, that you might be an ally, or at least that you'd be too busy with your own problems to ask too many questions." She closed the laptop. "And instead I got a family. A real one. something I didn't even know I needed until I had it. The word hung between them, fragile and dangerous. Family. Such a small word to contain so much weight. "We need to figure out who to trust," Garrett said. "Journalists, lawyers, law enforcement, someone who can't be bought or intimidated. That's the problem I've been trying to solve for 8 months." Claire pulled up a different folder on her screen, this one filled with research files. "Journalists. My mother has connections at every major media company in California. Law enforcement titan has contributed to every district attorney's campaign for the last decade. Federal regulators are understaffed, and one threatening letter from Titan's legal team would bury this for years. There has to be someone. Maybe. But everyone has a price, or a weakness, or something to lose." She turned the screen toward him, showing a list of names with notes beside each one. Reporters who'd taken corporate money, prosecutors who'd accepted campaign contributions, regulators who'd moved to private sector jobs after favorable rulings. The only way this works is if we make it impossible to suppress. Release everything at once, everywhere. Every news outlet, every watchdog group, every regulatory agency simultaneously. Create so much noise that even Titan's lawyers can't silence it. Garrett studied the screen, the carefully researched list of potential allies who'd all been compromised in one way or another. "There's one name here without a note. Walker Brennan. Independent investigative reporter based in Sacramento. He brought down 2 senators and a pharmaceutical CEO. Turned down a network job to stay independent." Claire's expression was cautious hope mixed with doubt. "I've been too afraid to contact him. Once I reach out, there's no taking it back. If he's compromised, if he tells the wrong people, then we're careful. We give him enough to prove we're legitimate without giving him everything. We meet in public where there are witnesses." Garrett reached for his own laptop, pulling up Walker Brennan's website. The design was basic, functional, clearly built by someone who cared more about content than aesthetics. The most recent article was an exposé on municipal corruption in Modesto. He has a secure contact form for sources. We send him one document, something undeniable. Claire bit her lip, then nodded. She opened a file, selected a memo dated March 2019, with Evangeline Ashford's signature approving a waste disposal plan that violated 6 different EPA regulations. This one. It's enough to get his attention without giving him everything. They composed the email together, each word weighed carefully. Too much detail and Titan's lawyers would claim trade secrets. Too little and Brennan might dismiss them as cranks. The final version was surgical in its precision. "Mr. Brennan, I am the daughter of Evangeline Ashford, CEO of Titan Industries. I have evidence that Titan has systematically contaminated municipal water supplies in 7 California cities over the past 6 years, resulting in at least 52 deaths and hundreds of illnesses. The contamination was deliberate, a strategy to devalue property for acquisition. Attached is one memo proving knowledge and intent at the highest level. I have 85 gigabytes of additional documentation. Lives depend on this story being told. I hope you're the journalist who can tell it. C.A." Claire's finger hovered over the send button. Last chance to back out. "We're past that," Garrett said. She clicked send. The email vanished into the digital void, and for a moment they both stared at the screen like it might reveal the future. Now what? Now we wait, and we hope Walker Brennan checks his secure messages before your mother figures out exactly which apartment in Riverside County you're hiding in. Dawn was breaking over the complex when Garrett finally convinced Claire to get some sleep. She'd been running on adrenaline and fear for so long that coming down felt dangerous, like her body might never start again if she stopped moving. Maggie woke up at 7:30, stumbling out of her room with bedhead and her stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest. "Why is Claire sleeping on the couch?" "Because we stayed up all night planning to destroy a billion-dollar company that murdered your mother," wasn't an appropriate answer for a 7-year-old. "We were watching movies. She fell asleep." Maggie accepted this with the easy faith of childhood. She climbed onto the couch next to Claire's sleeping form, careful not to wake her, and turned on Saturday morning cartoons with the volume low. Garrett made pancakes badly as usual and tried not to think about the hard drive sitting in Claire's room containing proof that the world was crueler than he'd wanted Maggie to know. Walker Brennan responded at 9:47 a.m. The notification came through on Claire's laptop with a soft chime that made them both jump. She'd been awake for 20 minutes, sitting at the kitchen table with coffee while Maggie colored at the other end. He wants to meet, today, 2 p.m. Rosie's Diner on Highway 91. Claire's hands were shaking as she read the message. Public place, neutral ground. He says to bring documentation but nothing that can't be replaced. He'll come alone. Garrett looked at the clock. 4 hours. Can we trust him? I don't know, but we're out of options and out of time. The diner was exactly the kind of place you'd pick for a meeting you didn't want anyone to remember. Faded vinyl booths, fluorescent lights that made everyone look slightly jaundiced, and waitresses who'd seen everything twice and weren't impressed either time. Walker Brennan was already there when they arrived, sitting in a corner booth with clear sight lines to both the entrance and the kitchen exit. Mid-40s, wearing a jacket that had seen better days with the kind of eyes that suggested he'd stopped believing in coincidences around the same time he'd stopped believing in politicians. He didn't stand when they approached, just gestured to the seats across from him. Claire Ashford, and you are? Garrett Holloway. I worked for Vertex Manufacturing before Titan acquired it. Something shifted in Brennan's expression. Recognition, maybe. Or just another piece of the puzzle clicking into place. And what's your stake in this, Mr. Holloway? My wife died from a brain tumor in 2022. Riverside County water was contaminated from 2019 to 2021. Brennan's eyes went flat. The look of someone who'd heard too many stories like this and still felt every one. Show me what you have. Claire pulled the hard drive from her messenger bag, set it on the table between them like a grenade with the pin half pulled. 85 gigabytes. Internal memos, email chains, financial records, chemical analyses. Everything you need to prove Titan Industries deliberately contaminated 7 municipal water supplies to manipulate property values. That's a hell of an accusation. It's a hell of a crime. Brennan picked up the drive, turned it over in his fingers. You're the CEO's daughter. How do I know this isn't fabricated corporate letterhead email systems you'd have access to all of it? Why would I fabricate evidence against my own mother? Revenge, money, attention, mental illness. I can think of a dozen reasons why a rich kid might create a scandal. Claire's jaw tightened. I'm risking everything to give you this story. My family, my inheritance, probably my freedom. If I wanted attention or money, there are easier ways. So why are you doing it? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with the weight of everything that had led to this moment. Because 52 people are dead. Because my mother ordered their deaths as casually as you'd order coffee. Because someone has to stop her. Brennan studied her face for a long moment. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him because he nodded slowly. Okay. Let's say I believe you. What do you want from me? Publish it. All of it. I want the world to know what Titan did. I want justice for the people they killed. Justice is a legal concept. I'm a journalist. Best I can do is truth. Then I'll settle for truth. Brennan pulled out a small recording device, older model, the kind that couldn't connect to the internet. I need to ask you questions. On the record. If your story checks out, if the documents are authentic, I'll run it. He paused, making sure they understood the weight of what came next. But you need to understand what that means. Once this is public, there's no taking it back. Your life as you know it is over. Both of you. Claire met Garrett's eyes across the table. He gave her the smallest nod. We understand. Brennan hit record. The interview lasted 40 minutes. He asked questions with the precision of a surgeon testing for inconsistencies, probing for weakness. Who, what, when, where, how do you know? Can you prove it? Who else has seen this? Why should anyone believe you? Claire answered each one calmly, methodically. Her voice stayed steady even as her hands shook. She had the demeanor of someone who'd been preparing for this moment for months, rehearsing answers until they were second nature. Garrett watched Brennan's expression change as the interview progressed. Skepticism giving way to something harder. The look of someone who'd just realized they were holding dynamite. They were so focused on the conversation that none of them noticed the two men who'd entered the diner until they were standing at the edge of the booth. corporate security. You could tell by the suits that fit too well and the calm expressions that suggested they were very good at making problems disappear quietly. "Ms. Ashford, your mother would like to speak with you." The taller one had a voice like gravel wrapped in silk, polite on the surface threat underneath. Brennan's hand moved toward his phone. The second man shifted position, not quite blocking, but close enough to be a message. "This is a private conversation," Brennan said. "Unless you're here as customers, I suggest you leave. We're here on family business. Ms. Ashford's mother is very concerned about her well-being." Claire's voice came out cold. "I'm 23 years old. I don't need an escort." "Nevertheless, Ms. Ashford has asked us to ensure your safe return home." The unspoken message was clear. "You're coming with us, whether you want to or not." Garrett's phone was already in his hand under the table. 3 taps, and it was recording video camera pointed up at an angle that caught all 4 of their faces. "We're not going anywhere." The first man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Holloway, we've looked into you. Former Vertex employee. Wife died of cancer 2 years ago. Lost your job. Desperate for money." He pulled out a business card, set it on the table with the deliberate care of someone placing a chess piece. "Ms. Ashford is clearly paying you to support her delusions. When this falls apart, and it will, you'll be the one facing charges for fraud. Think about your daughter before you make this worse." Brennan's recording device was still running. The red light blinked steadily. "For the record, are you gentlemen threatening a journalist and his sources?" The second man spoke for the first time. "We're offering friendly advice. Ms. Ashford is unwell. She needs help, not enablers. Her mother is prepared to be generous with anyone who assists in her recovery." Claire stood up. The movement was sudden enough that both men tensed. "My name is Claire Ashford. My mother is Evangeline Ashford, CEO of Titan Industries." Her voice carried across the diner, drawing attention from other tables. "She ordered the poisoning of 7 California cities. 52 people died. I have proof documents with her signature, emails, everything. And if you try to force me to go anywhere, I'm going to start streaming this conversation live right now to every platform I have access to." She held up her phone, already unlocked, to the camera app. "We can do this quiet, or we can do it loud. Your choice." For 3 seconds, nobody moved. The entire diner had gone silent, everyone watching this unfold like spectators at a car crash. Then the first man's hand reached for Claire's arm. Garrett was out of the booth before conscious thought caught up with movement, putting himself between them. "Don't." The word came out flat, final. The man's hand stopped 6 inches from Claire's shoulder. "Mr. Holloway, you're making a very poor decision." "Wouldn't be my first." Brennan was on his feet now, 2 phone out and recording. "Walker Brennan, independent journalist. I'm documenting this interaction. You've just threatened a source in front of witnesses. I suggest you leave before this becomes tomorrow's headline." The 2 men exchanged a glance. Some wordless communication passed between them. "This isn't over," the first one said. "Ms. Ashford, your mother will be in touch." They left, but it felt less like retreat and more like regrouping. The door closed behind them, and the diner slowly returned to its normal hum of conversation. Garrett's heart was hammering against his ribs. He'd just put himself between corporate fixers and their target. People like that didn't forget. Claire was still standing, phone in hand, breathing hard. "That was incredibly stupid." "Yeah, we're all caught up on stupid now." Brennan powered off his recording device, then started typing rapidly on his phone. "I need to verify everything you've given me. Chemical analyses, financial records, all of it. But if it checks out, and based on what I just saw, I think it will, this is going to explode." He looked up at them with something approaching respect. "You understand what you've just done? Titan will come at you with everything. Legally, financially, probably in ways we can't predict. You need protection." Claire sat back down, suddenly exhausted. "Where do we get that?" "I know a lawyer, James Morrison. He specializes in whistleblower cases. Handles people who've gone up against corporations and survived." Brennan scribbled a name and number on a napkin. "Call him today. Tell him I sent you. In the meantime, I'm going to start verification. If this is as solid as you say, I'll have the story ready to publish by tomorrow night. That fast? You've done all the hard work. The documentation is already there. All I need to do is verify and write. He pocketed the hard drive. Go somewhere public for the next 24 hours. Somewhere with cameras and witnesses. Don't go home until I tell you the story is live. Where are we supposed to go? Brennan shrugged. I don't know. But Titan knows where you live now. And based on what I just saw, they're not planning to ask nicely next time. They left the diner through the kitchen exit, Brennan's suggestion, and walked 3 blocks before Garrett felt safe enough to slow down. Claire was still shaking, adrenaline wearing off and leaving exhaustion in its wake. We need to get Maggie. Garrett's first thought, his only thought. She's with Mrs. Keating, but we can't bring her into this, not if Titan's people are looking. So what do we do? Claire's voice was small, scared, 23 years old, and in over her head. We call Morrison, get legal protection, figure out how to keep my daughter safe while we burn down your mother's empire. He pulled out his phone and dialed the number Brennan had given them. The lawyer answered on the 3rd ring. Morrison, my name is Garrett Holloway. Walker Brennan said to call you. We need help. A pause. Then, tell me what you've done. Garrett looked at Claire, at the woman who'd walked into his life 2 months ago with secrets that had just blown both their worlds apart. We're about to expose a corporate murder conspiracy, and we need someone who can keep us alive long enough to see it through. Where are you? Riverside. We just left Rosie's diner after being confronted by corporate security. Morrison's voice sharpened. Don't go home. Don't go anywhere predictable. Find a hotel, pay cash, check in under a fake name. I'll meet you in 3 hours. The call ended. Garrett and Claire stood on a street corner in Riverside County, California, with no plan and no safety net, and a hard drive full of evidence that could bring down a billionaire. This is really happening, Claire said. It wasn't a question. Yeah, it is. Garrett thought about Maggie, about explaining to his daughter why they couldn't go home. Thought about Rachel, and whether she'd be proud or horrified by what he was about to do. Then he thought about 52 people who'd died because someone decided profit mattered more than human life, and the choice didn't feel like a choice at all. Come on, we need to find somewhere to wait this out. They walked, and behind them, Riverside County went about its business, completely unaware that in approximately 24 hours, everything was going to change. They found a motel on the east side of Riverside, the kind of place that asked for cash up front and didn't look too closely at the names in the registration book. Garrett wrote David Martinez in handwriting that didn't resemble his own, while Claire waited in the car with the engine running. The room smelled like cigarettes and industrial cleaner, 2 beds with comforters that had seen better decades, a window that faced the parking lot. Safe enough for now, anonymous enough that Titan's people would need time to find them. Garrett called Mrs. Keating from a burner phone he'd bought at a gas station, one of those prepaid things that came in plastic packaging designed to frustrate anyone over 30. Mrs. Keating, it's Garrett. I need a favor. The elderly woman's voice came through sharp and suspicious. You in trouble? Maybe. I need Maggie to stay with you tonight. Tomorrow too, if that's all right. I'll explain when I can, but right now I just need to know she's safe. A pause. Mrs. Keating had lived long enough to know when not to ask questions. That child can stay as long as you need, but Garrett, whatever you're mixed up in, you be careful. That little girl needs her father. I know. Thank you. He hung up and turned to find Claire sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at her hands like she didn't recognize them. I just put a target on everyone I care about. Her voice was hollow. My mother knows I was at that diner. She knows you're helping me. She's going to come at us with everything she has. Garrett sat down on the other bed, the springs creaking under his weight. So we move faster than she expects. Brennan publishes tomorrow. Once it's out there, we're not targets anymore, we're witnesses. You really think that'll protect us? I think it's the only shot we have. Claire pulled her knees up to her chest, suddenly looking much younger than 23. I keep thinking about what happens after. Even if we win, even if my mother goes to prison, I'll be the daughter who destroyed her own family. Half the country will hate me for being a traitor. The other half will hate me for being complicit in the first place. Or, Garrett said quietly, you'll be the person who saved lives by telling the truth when it cost you everything. Does that make it worth it? I don't know. But Rachel died because your mother decided profit was more important than people. That's on her, not you. What happens next, whether more people die, whether she gets away with it, that's on both of us now. Claire looked at him with eyes that had aged decades in the past 48 hours. You're a good person, Garrett Holloway. I'm a desperate person. There's a difference. I don't think there is. Not always. James Morrison arrived at the motel at 6 p.m. sharp, carrying a briefcase that had survived at least 2 decades of courtroom warfare. He was shorter than Garrett expected, early 50s, with the kind of face that suggested he'd heard every lie twice and believed none of them. Walker Brennan says you have documentation proving Titan Industries deliberately contaminated municipal water supplies, resulting in 52 deaths. Morrison didn't bother with pleasantries. Show me. Claire pulled up files on her laptop while Morrison settled into the room's single chair, reading with the focused intensity of someone who knew exactly what to look for. Chemical analyses, financial records, email chains discussing settlement amounts like they were negotiating used car prices instead of human lives. After 40 minutes, he sat back, removed his reading glasses, and rubbed his eyes. This is comprehensive, almost too comprehensive. What does that mean? It means Titan's lawyers will argue you had months to fabricate this. They'll claim you stole corporate data, manufactured evidence, committed industrial espionage. They'll try to make you the criminal instead of the witness. Claire's face went pale. Can they do that? They can try. Whether they succeed depends on how fast we move and how well we protect you. Morrison pulled a legal pad from his briefcase, started making notes in precise handwriting. Here's what happens next. Brennan publishes tomorrow. The story goes viral and it will, this is too big not to. Within hours, Titan's legal team will issue statements calling it fake news, manufactured by a troubled daughter with mental health issues. He looked up at Claire. They'll paint you as unstable, probably get doctors willing to testify about previous psychological evaluations, treatment you may or may not have received. This is what they do. Character assassination first, legal warfare second. So how do we fight it? We don't fight it. We get ahead of it. FBI has a division that handles corporate environmental crimes. I have contacts there, agents who've been trying to build cases against companies like Titan for years. We give them everything before Brennan publishes. Morrison clicked his pen, a nervous habit that suggested this was the part he didn't like. But you need to understand what you're agreeing to. Once the FBI is involved, you're witnesses in a federal investigation. That means protective custody restrictions on where you can go, who you can talk to. It means your life stops being yours until the trial ends. Garrett thought about Maggie. About 3 more years until she was old enough to understand why her father had disappeared into witness protection. About missing every soccer game, every school play, every ordinary moment of her childhood. What about my daughter? She comes with you. Protective custody extends to immediate family. It's not ideal, but it's safe. She's 7 years old. She's already lost her mother. I can't ask her to lose her home, her school, her friends. You're not asking, Morrison interrupted gently. Titan is. They're the ones who made this necessary. Don't let them make you the villain for protecting your child. The words landed like a punch to the sternum. True and unfair in equal measure. Claire's voice cut through the silence that followed. What if I do this alone? What if Garrett backs out, keeps Maggie safe, and I'm the only witness? Then you'll be discredited within a week and probably institutionalized within a month. You need corroboration. You need someone with no financial stake in Titan's destruction standing beside you saying, yes, this is real. Morrison looked at Garrett. Walker tells me your wife died from a brain tumor. Timeline matches Riverside contamination. June 2022, 18 months after she started showing symptoms. Medical records. Everything. Diagnosis, treatment history, death certificate. That's your corroboration. That's why Garrett Holloway matters to this case. You're not just some random guy she paid off. You're a victim with documentation proving the connection between Titan's actions and actual human death. The room felt smaller suddenly, the weight of what they were about to do pressing down like atmospheric pressure. How long? Garrett asked. From FBI involvement to trial. Conservatively 18 months, maybe 2 years. Federal cases move slowly when there's this much money involved. 2 years of Maggie growing up in witness protection. 2 years of missing the ordinary moments that made childhood childhood. 2 years of her life he'd never get back. But 52 families had lost everything. And if they walked away now, there'd be 52 more. Okay, we do it. But I need to see my daughter first. Explain what's happening in a way she can understand. Morrison checked his watch. You have until tomorrow morning. After Brennan's story drops, Titan will move fast. We need to be faster. He stood gathering his notes. I'll contact my FBI people tonight. Get them ready to move. You two get some sleep if you can. Tomorrow changes everything. After Morrison left, Garrett and Claire sat in the motel room while darkness fell outside and the sounds of Highway 91 filtered through thin walls. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Finally, Claire broke the silence. I'm sorry. For what? For bringing this into your life. You were just trying to survive and I showed up and dragged you into a war you didn't ask for. Garrett thought about the morning he'd opened the door to find her standing there composed and desperate in equal measure. Thought about the past 2 months of slowly letting someone new into the space Rachel had left empty. You gave me a reason, he said. These past 2 years I've been going through the motions, working, paying bills, taking care of Maggie. But it all felt hollow, like I was waiting for permission to start living again. He met her eyes across the narrow space between beds. Rachel would have wanted this, would have wanted me to fight. She was always braver than me about the important things. Claire's expression crumpled for just a moment before she controlled it. I wish I'd known her. She would have liked you, would have appreciated what you're doing, and she would have made better pancakes than either of us. The laugh that escaped Claire was half-sob tension breaking like a dam giving way. I really am terrible at pancakes. The worst I've ever had. Maggie was being generous when she called them weird. They sat there in a cheap motel room laughing about pancakes, while outside, somewhere in Riverside County, Titan Industries was mobilizing resources to make sure this conversation never became public. The absurdity of it felt exactly right. Garrett picked up Maggie from Mrs. Keating's apartment at 7 a.m., the old woman watching from her doorway with eyes that knew more than her questions asked. Maggie was still in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Are we going home now, Daddy? Not yet, baby. We need to talk about some grown-up stuff first. He took her to a park 3 blocks away, one of those neighborhood playgrounds with swings that squeaked and a slide that got too hot in summer. This early on a Sunday morning, they had the place to themselves. Maggie climbed onto a swing, dragging her feet in the dirt. Am I in trouble? No, sweetheart, you're not in trouble. Nobody's in trouble. Except that wasn't true, and lying to children about important things was how you taught them not to trust you. Actually, that's not right. Claire and I might be in some trouble, but it's the good kind of trouble. Maggie's forehead wrinkled in confusion. There's good trouble. Sometimes, when you do the right thing even though it's hard, like when you told your teacher that boy was being mean to the new girl, remember? And he got mad at you. Yeah, that was good trouble. You did the right thing even though it made someone angry. Garrett pushed her gently on the swing, trying to find words a 7-year-old could understand for concepts that shouldn't exist in a 7-year-old's world. Claire found out that some people at her mom's company did something really bad. They made people sick. And Mommy was one of those people. Maggie's feet stopped dragging. The swing slowed. The bad water? She remembered. Of course she remembered. Maggie forgot nothing important. Yeah, the bad water. Claire has proof that her mom's company knew the water was bad and didn't fix it because fixing it cost money. That's mean. Such a simple word for premeditated murder. Mean. like playground bullying scaled up to corporate homicide. It's worse than mean baby. It's against the law, and Claire and I are going to help make sure the people who did it get in trouble. Good trouble. The best kind. But it means some things are going to change for a little while. We might have to stay somewhere else. You might have to switch schools temporarily, but I promise we'll do it together." Maggie was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then she turned to look at him with those eyes that were too old for 7. "Will Claire stay with us?" The question surprised him. "Do you want her to—" "Yeah, she's nice, and she doesn't cry as much as you do when you think I'm asleep." Garrett's throat closed up. He'd thought he'd been quiet about the grief that still ambushed him at 3 a.m. Apparently he'd been wrong. "Claire's family now if she wants to be. Is that okay with you?" Maggie nodded seriously. "Okay, but she has to get better at pancakes." "Deal." He pulled her off the swing into a hug that lasted longer than usual. Maggie tolerated it with the patience of a child who understood her parent needed comfort more than she did. "I love you more than anything in the whole world, Maggie." "I know, Daddy. I love you too." Walker Brennan's article went live at 10 a.m. Pacific Time on Sunday morning. The headline was surgical in its precision: "Titan Industries, a Legacy of Poison." Garrett watched it happen in real time from the motel room. Claire's laptop open on the bed between them, refreshing the page every few seconds as the view count climbed. 100 views, 500, 2,000. The article laid everything out with the methodical care of someone who'd spent decades building cases that couldn't be refuted. 7 cities, 52 deaths, 85 gigabytes of documentation. Evangeline Ashford's signature on memos approving the contamination strategy. Brennan had included chemical analyses, financial records showing the cost-benefit calculations, email chains discussing settlement amounts. He'd interviewed former Titan employees who corroborated the timeline. He'd verified everything. It was undeniable. 10,000 views. 20,000. Social media caught fire. Within an hour, the hashtag #TitanTruth was trending on every platform. Journalists from major outlets were calling Brennan for comment. Cable news was scrambling to get experts on environmental law. By noon, the stock market had noticed. Titan Industries shares dropped 40% in the first hour of trading, triggering automatic circuit breakers that halted transactions. When trading resumed, they dropped another 20. Morrison called at 12:15. "FBI wants to meet, now. Agent Harrison Drake is leading the investigation. He's been tracking Titan for 3 years. This is the break he's been waiting for." "Where?" "Sacramento field office. Can you be there by 3? Garrett looked at Claire, at Maggie, coloring quietly in the corner at the laptop screen, showing a number that had climbed past 100,000 views. "We'll be there." The FBI field office in Sacramento was a nondescript building designed to discourage curiosity. Agent Harrison Drake met them in a conference room on the 3rd floor, accompanied by 2 other agents and a federal prosecutor who looked young enough to still believe in justice. Drake was mid-40s with the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd seen corporate malfeasance from every angle and stopped being surprised. "Ms. Ashford, Mr. Holloway, thank you for coming in." He didn't waste time on pleasantries. "I've reviewed the documentation Walker Brennan provided. If it's authentic, and our preliminary analysis suggests it is, this is the largest corporate environmental crime in California history." He pulled out a file, spread photographs across the table. Crime scene photos from Brennan Falls, medical records from victims, death certificates. "My sister Emily died in 2018 from a glioblastoma. She lived in Brennan Falls, drank tap water every day for 3 years before she got sick." Drake's voice was professionally neutral, but something underneath suggested this was personal. "I've been trying to build a case against Titan since her funeral. Every time I got close evidence disappeared. Witnesses recanted. Investigations got shut down by people higher up the chain than me." He looked at Claire. "You just gave me what I've been looking for, but I need you to understand what you're signing up for. Testifying against your mother in federal court. Protective custody for the duration of the investigation and trial. Complete cooperation with our evidence gathering. I understand. Do you? Because once you're in the system, you can't change your mind. The government doesn't let witnesses walk away. Claire's hands were steady on the table. I've been running for 10 months. I'm done running. Tell me where to sign. The federal prosecutor slid documents across the table. Immunity agreements, witness protection contracts, non-disclosure agreements about operational security. Garrett read through page after page of legal language that boiled down to your life belongs to us now. What about my daughter? She's included in protective custody as immediate family. We'll set you up in a safe location, new identities, temporarily education arrangements for your daughter. Drake leaned forward. I won't lie to you, Mr. Holloway, this is going to be hard. Harder than you think. But families who go into witness protection together generally do better than individuals. You'll have each other. Garrett thought about 2 years of living under assumed names, looking over their shoulders, wondering if every stranger was a Titan operative. Thought about Maggie growing up knowing her father had chosen this. Then he thought about Rachel and the choice she'd never gotten to make. Where do I sign? The news reached Evangeline Ashford while she was in her office at Titan headquarters, the kind of corner suite that overlooked downtown Sacramento, with views designed to remind people how high you'd climbed. The first call came from her PR director at 10:30 a.m. Ms. Ashford, we have a situation. By 11, the board of directors was demanding an emergency meeting. By noon, 3 executives had resigned. By 1 p.m., federal agents were in the lobby with a warrant. Evangeline Ashford had built an empire over 30 years, starting with nothing but intelligence and willingness to do what others wouldn't. She'd clawed her way up through an industry designed to keep women at middle management, had made the hard decisions that separated billionaires from millionaires. And her daughter had just destroyed it all in a single morning. She made one phone call before the FBI reached her office. Claire's phone rang at 2:15 p.m. just as they were finishing the witness statements. The screen showed Mother in letters that felt accusatory. Should I answer? Drake nodded. Record it. Anything she says could be evidence. Claire hit answer then speaker. Her mother's voice filled the conference room, elegant and cold. Isabella. Not Claire. Isabella. The name Evangeline had chosen before her daughter was born, before she'd decided that Claire sounded more accessible, more American. Hello, Mother. What have you done? The question carried the weight of 30 years of expectations shattered in 90 minutes. I told the truth, about Brennan Falls, about Riverside, about all of it. You've destroyed everything I built, everything I did for you. Claire's hand tightened on the phone. You killed 52 people for profit, Mother. You don't get to make that about me. I made difficult choices in a difficult industry, choices that ensured you'd never want for anything, choices that gave you the education, the opportunities, the life you've had. Built on corpses. Evangeline's voice went quieter, more dangerous. You're naive. You think the world runs on kindness, on morality. It runs on power and money. I taught you that, or I tried to. You taught me that everything has a price, that profit matters more than people, that you can buy your way out of any consequence. Claire's voice cracked but held. I'm done learning those lessons. A long pause. Then, the FBI is here. I assume that's your doing as well. They've been trying to build a case against you for years. I just gave them what they needed. And what do you get, Isabella? Satisfaction, revenge, or just the warm feeling of moral superiority while I go to prison? I get to sleep at night knowing I did the right thing. Evangeline's laugh was sharp enough to draw blood. The right thing? You sound like a child. The right thing doesn't exist in business. Only profitable and unprofitable, legal and illegal. I chose profitability over legality and accepted the risks. You chose betrayal. I chose truth. Truth is a luxury afforded to people who've never had to fight for survival. I built this company from nothing. I clawed my way up in an industry designed to destroy women. Every shortcut I took, every corner I cut, every difficult decision I made, all of it was so you wouldn't have to. The words hung in the air. And for just a moment Claire's resolve wavered, because buried under the justification and rationalization was something that might have been genuine belief. Evangeline Ashford truly thought she'd been protecting her daughter. "I know, Mother. That's what makes it so sad." "Will you visit me?" The question came out smaller than the rest, human in a way the CEO voice never was. "When they put me in prison, when all this is over. Will you visit?" Claire looked at Drake, at Morrison, at Garrett, at all the people who'd helped her get to this moment when she had to choose between the mother who'd raised her and the principle that said some things couldn't be forgiven. "I don't know. Maybe. After I've had time." "That's more than I deserve." For the first time in the conversation, Evangeline Ashford sounded like a mother instead of a CEO. "Goodbye, Isabella. I hope you find whatever peace you're looking for." The line went dead. Claire set down the phone with hands that shook so badly she nearly dropped it. "That's evidence," Drake said quietly. "Admission of illegal activity, acknowledgement of the charges. Combined with the documents, her own words just sealed the case." Morrison made notes on his legal pad. "Titan's lawyers will claim she was under duress, speaking emotionally rather than factually. But juries hear tone. That recording makes her human, which makes the crimes worse. Humans have choices. Monsters don't." Claire put her face in her hands and breathed through what felt like her chest caving in. Garrett moved his chair closer, not touching, just present. "You did the right thing." His voice was low enough that only she could hear. "Then why does it feel like I just killed my own mother?" "Because love and truth aren't supposed to be enemies. But sometimes they are, and you have to choose." The trial took 18 months to reach a courtroom. 18 months of living in a suburban house in Modesto under the names David and Sarah Martinez, of Maggie attending school as Emma Martinez, of Garrett working a consulting job arranged by the FBI, and Claire teaching online courses in environmental science from a home office. 18 months of waiting. The trial itself lasted 7 weeks. The prosecution called 43 witnesses, introduced 600 pieces of evidence, and methodically built a case that Evangeline Ashford had knowingly and deliberately ordered the contamination of 7 municipal water supplies to manipulate property values. Claire testified on day 12. She walked to the witness stand in a conservative gray suit, her hair pulled back, hands steady as she placed one on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. She looked at her mother exactly once. Evangeline sat at the defense table in a designer suit that probably cost more than most people earned in a month. Posture, perfect expression, neutral. The prosecutor led Claire through her testimony with the care of someone handling explosives. How she'd discovered the files, how she'd verified them, how she'd spent 8 months trying to find the courage to do what she knew was right. "I loved my mother. Part of me still does. But 52 people are dead because of decisions she made. Hundreds more suffered. No amount of love can justify looking away from that." Titan's defense attorney tried to break her on cross-examination, suggested she was motivated by greed, by revenge, by mental illness, pointed out that she'd had access to company systems, could have fabricated anything. Claire met every attack with quiet dignity. "I had everything. Money, security, a family name that opened doors. I gave all of that up because some things matter more than comfort. Justice matters more. Truth matters more. Those 52 people mattered more." When she stepped down from the witness stand, she walked past her mother's table without looking. But Drake, watching from the gallery, saw Evangeline's hands clench into fists, saw the muscle working in her jaw. Rage, maybe, or grief, or the terrible realization that her daughter had become the instrument of her destruction. Garrett testified on day 15. He brought photographs of Rachel medical records documenting her illness, water quality reports from Riverside County showing contamination levels during the relevant period. "I thought it was just bad luck, just the universe being cruel for no reason. Finding out that someone had made a deliberate choice to poison her, that her death was a line item in a cost-benefit analysis." He paused, gathering himself. "There aren't words for what that feels like. Knowing the person you loved most in the world died because someone decided their profit margin was more important than her life." The defense tried to argue that Rachel's death couldn't be definitively linked to the contaminated water. That correlation wasn't causation. The prosecution countered with chemical analyses, medical records, epidemiological studies showing cancer clusters in every city Titan had contaminated. The connection wasn't just probable, it was certain beyond reasonable doubt. Other victims' families testified, parents who'd lost children, children who'd lost parents, spouses, siblings, friends, each one adding another face to the statistics, making the 52 deaths real in a way numbers never could. By the time the prosecution rested their case, the defense had nothing left but procedure and doubt. Their strategy shifted from proving innocence to minimizing culpability. Evangeline Ashford had been following standard industry practices. The contamination was unintentional. The settlements were generous. The jury didn't buy it. They deliberated for 4 days. On Tuesday afternoon in late August, they returned with a verdict. Guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted. Some people cheered. Some wept. Garrett just sat there holding Claire's hand, watching Evangeline Ashford's face as the verdict was read. For the first time since the trial began, the mask cracked. She closed her eyes, shoulders sagging, and for just a moment looked like what she was, a 60-year-old woman who'd gambled everything on the belief that money could buy immunity from consequences and lost. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Judge Patricia Morrison, no relation to their lawyer, looked at Evangeline with something approaching contempt. You were given power, wealth, opportunity. You could have used those gifts to improve lives, to build something meaningful. Instead, you used them to poison innocent people for profit. You prioritized quarterly earnings over human lives. You treated other people's children, other people's spouses as acceptable losses in pursuit of wealth you didn't need. The judge sentenced her to 15 years in federal prison to be served consecutively. With Evangeline's age and the possibility of parole, she'd likely die behind bars. Titan Industries declared bankruptcy within a month. Assets were liquidated to pay settlements to victims' families. Each family received compensation, not enough to replace what they'd lost, because nothing could do that, but enough to acknowledge that their loved ones' lives had value. Rachel's settlement came through in October, $230,000. Garrett put half in a college fund for Maggie. The rest he donated to an environmental advocacy group that helped communities fight corporate contamination. Claire and Garrett stood in the courthouse parking lot after sentencing, blinking in late summer sunlight that felt too bright for the moment. What now? Claire's question echoed the uncertainty they'd both been avoiding. Now we figure out how to live with what we've done. They drove back to Modesto in Morrison's car, their witness protection identities no longer necessary, but the house still theirs if they wanted it. Maggie was waiting with the FBI agent assigned to watch her doing homework at the kitchen table. Is it over, Daddy? Yeah, baby, it's over. Can we go home now? Home. The apartment in Riverside County was still there, still under Garrett's name, but could they go back to that life after everything that had changed? Maybe we stay here. New start for all of us. Would that be okay? Maggie looked at Claire standing in the kitchen doorway. Can Claire stay too? Claire pulled out a chair, sat down next to Maggie at the table. I don't have anywhere else I'd rather be. Then yeah, we can stay. 6 months later, on a Sunday morning in early spring, 3 people sat around a kitchen table in a small house on the east side of Modesto. The neighborhood was quiet, working class, the kind of place where people kept to themselves but looked out for each other. Garrett was attempting pancakes with the determined optimism of someone who'd never quite mastered the skill. Claire was helping, which mostly meant preventing the batter from burning while trying not to laugh. Maggie was setting the table, humming to herself. Daddy's pancakes are still weird. Maggie's voice carried the easy criticism of a child completely comfortable in her home. They're perfectly imperfect, Claire said. That's a nice way of saying they're terrible. Garrett flipped a pancake that was definitely more brown than golden, definitely not round. I'm getting better. You're really not. They laughed, all 3 of them, and the sound filled the kitchen with something that felt like healing. After breakfast, Claire pulled an envelope from her bag. Plain white, no return address. She'd been carrying it for a week, waiting for the right moment. I wrote something. For Rachel. She slid it across the table to Garrett. You don't have to read it now, or ever, but I wanted you to know it exists. Garrett picked up the envelope, felt the weight of paper inside, opened it carefully. The letter was handwritten on simple stationery, Claire's careful script filling a single page. Dear Rachel Holloway, I never met you, but I owe you everything. You love them so well they know how to love again. Your daughter is brilliant and brave and kind. Your husband is the best man I've ever known. They carry you with them in ways they probably don't even realize. I'm the daughter of the woman who killed you. I know that. I'll carry that knowledge for the rest of my life. But I'm trying to build something better from what she destroyed, trying to deserve the second chance your death helped create. I'll take care of them if they'll let me. I promise. With gratitude and sorrow, Claire. Garrett read it twice, vision blurring on the second pass. He'd thought he was done crying about Rachel. Apparently he'd been wrong. Thank you. His voice came out rough. She would have liked you, would have wanted this for us. He stood, went to the bedroom, and returned with a small velvet box. Inside was Rachel's wedding ring, the simple gold band she'd worn for 9 years of marriage. I've been thinking about what to do with this. Keeping it felt like holding on. Getting rid of it felt like letting go. He opened the box, showed Maggie the ring catching morning light. But maybe there's a third option. 2 weeks later, they took the ring to a jeweler on Main Street. An old man with steady hands who'd been making jewelry for 40 years and understood the weight of what people brought him. Can you melt this down? Make it into a pendant for my daughter. The jeweler examined the ring with professional care. You sure about this, son? Yeah, so she always has part of her mom with her. So the past comes with us, but doesn't trap us. The pendant arrived 3 weeks later. Simple gold circle on a delicate chain. Rachel's ring transformed into something Maggie could wear and carry and pass down someday to her own children. Garrett fastened it around his daughter's neck on a Sunday afternoon, and Maggie ran to the mirror to see how it looked. It's perfect, Daddy. She touched it reverently, understanding without being told that this was important. Now Mom's always with us. Yeah, baby, she is. Claire watched from the doorway this family that had chosen her when she had nothing left to offer but truth and guilt in equal measure. Watched Garrett's hands gentle on his daughter's shoulders. Watched Maggie's face in the mirror, serious and content. This was the answer to the question that had haunted her for 10 months of running. Not whether she could survive telling the truth, but whether she could build something worth surviving for on the other side of it. The pendant caught afternoon light gold against Maggie's skin, and Claire understood what Garrett had meant about the past coming forward without trapping them. Rachel Holloway was here in this moment, in this house, in the love that had taught them all how to love again. Not gone, transformed. Maggie turned from the mirror and hugged her father, then walked over and hugged Claire, two small arms fierce with the certainty of someone who knew exactly where she belonged. I'm glad you stayed, Claire's voice caught. Me too, sweetheart, me too. Outside, Modesto went about its ordinary Sunday business. Inside, 3 people who'd survived the hardest thing they'd ever done sat together in afternoon light, not talking about justice or trials or the empire that had fallen. Just being, just living, just grateful for the messy, imperfect, beautiful thing they'd built from ruins. The envelope with $3 million sat somewhere in an evidence locker, catalogued and forgotten. The offer to stay silent had come too late and meant too little. Some things they'd learned couldn't be bought. Truth, family, the chance to begin again. These were the things worth fighting for. These were the things worth surviving for. And as spring light filled the kitchen and Maggie's laughter echoed off walls that finally felt like home, Garrett thought about the question he'd been asking himself since the day Claire walked through his door. Can you begin again after losing everything? He looked at his daughter wearing her mother's ring transformed, at the woman who'd risked everything to tell the truth, at the life they'd built from the wreckage of corporate greed and personal loss. Yes, he thought. Not easily. Not without cost. Not without carrying the past forward into whatever future you built. But yes, you could begin again, if you were brave enough to choose truth over comfort, If you found people who'd walk through fire beside you and call it family. If you understood that love didn't erase loss, it transformed it into something you could carry without being crushed. The answer was yes. And that finally was enough.